What if the world's most powerful figures decided to bypass the United Nations to broker peace? Imagine this, it's 2026 and a new exclusive body called the Global Peace and Security Board convenes. Not in New York, but in the Swiss mountains of Davos. This isn't just another summit. This is a radical proposal, born from the perceived gridlock of traditional diplomacy. The core idea is efficiency. The board would be small, comprised of the world's major economic and military powers. Think the US, China, key European nations, and rising giants like India and Brazil. Their mandate: to act decisively on global conflicts from Ukraine to the Middle East. Cutting through the red tape that often paralyzes larger, more inclusive bodies like the UN Security Council. Proponents argue that in an era of rapid-fire crises, the world can no longer afford the luxury of endless debate and vetoes. They believe that concentrating power among those who can actually enforce decisions is the only realistic path to stability. This is action over institutional legitimacy. But this vision of a streamlined, powerful peace committee raises profound questions. Critics see it not as a solution, but as the formalization of a great powers club that sidelines the voices of smaller nations. Where does this leave the principle of sovereign equality, the very foundation of the post-World War II international order? The absence of so many countries from the table could create a deep legitimacy crisis. Decisions made by a select few, no matter how well-intentioned, might be rejected by the many who were never consulted. This isn't just about fairness. It's about effectiveness. Peace imposed from the outside, without local buy-in, rarely lasts. Let's look at the shifting landscape of global alliances. Traditional partnerships, like the transatlantic alliance between Europe and the US, are already under strain. A Davos-led security framework could either strengthen these bonds through a shared sense of purpose or shatter them completely if disagreements arise. For example, if the board decided on a course of action in the Middle East that clashed with European interests, would it lead to a deeper rift? And how would a nation like Russia, often at odds with this bloc, react to being managed by a committee it perceives as hostile? Instead of resolving conflict, this new board could inadvertently create new front lines in a global power struggle. Then there's the money. A key and controversial element of this proposal is what some are calling dollar diplomacy 2.0. The plan hinges on massive economic incentives. Picture this, a multi-trillion-dollar reconstruction fund, championed by figures like Jared Kushner, aimed at rebuilding war-torn regions like Gaza. The idea is to tie peace directly to prosperity. Countries and factions that cooperate get access to transformative investment in infrastructure, technology, and education. Those who obstruct the process are locked out. It's a powerful carrot-and-stick approach, using economic leverage where military intervention has failed, but it also raises ethical alarms. Is this peace, or is it a form of economic coercion where sovereignty is traded for development funds? And what is the legal standing of such a body? An international law expert might argue that without a UN Charter amendment, the board would operate in a legal grey zone. Its decisions wouldn't have the force of international law, creating a parallel system of global governance. A former UN diplomat might warn of institutional rivalry, suggesting that this new structure would gut the UN of its primary function, turning it into little more than a humanitarian aid agency. The tension between the slow, inclusive, but legally sound UN process and a fast, exclusive, but legally ambiguous Davos model is at the heart of this debate. Ultimately, the 2026 Davos Peace Summit proposal forces us to confront a fundamental dilemma. In our fractured world, do we prioritize effectiveness or inclusivity? Do we empower the strong to act quickly, or do we uphold the principle that every nation, big or small, deserves a voice in matters of global security? The path chosen could redefine international relations for the 21st century. It's a high-stakes gamble between a new, more decisive world order and the risk of creating an even more divided and resentful planet. What do you think? Is this the future of peacemaking or a dangerous shortcut? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world in the quiet, snow-capped mountains of Davos. A new global power structure is quietly being assembled. Away from the usual headlines, a plan is taking shape. One that could redefine international peace and security for decades to come. Welcome to the story of the proposed 2026 Davos Peace Summit and the formation of a controversial new body, the Global Security Board. For years, the world has grappled with conflicts that seem to defy resolution. Traditional institutions like the United Nations Security Council often find themselves paralyzed by vetoes and competing national interests. Frustration has been mounting, not just in the halls of power, but on the streets where the real consequences of inaction are felt. From the ongoing devastation in Ukraine to the deep-seated conflicts in the Middle East, the existing framework for peace feels broken. Enter a bold, and some would say audacious, proposal, spearheaded by a coalition of influential tech billionaires, private equity titans, and a select group of former world leaders. The idea is simple, yet revolutionary. Create a new, agile, and decisive body to tackle global security threats. This isn't just another committee. This is the Global Security Board, envisioned as a streamlined alternative to the UN, funded not by member states, but by a colossal private endowment. The vision, set to be formalized at a landmark summit in Davos in 2026, is for a board of just 9 members. These wouldn't be political appointees in the traditional sense. Instead, they would be hand-picked for their supposed strategic brilliance, economic influence, and proven track records in getting things done. The sales pitch is one of efficiency. No more endless debates, no more procedural gridlock, just swift, decisive action. To understand the appeal, we have to look at the players involved. At the forefront is Jared Kushner, who has been quietly advocating for a radical new approach to Middle Eastern stability. His vision, which he's been shopping to powerful investors in the Gulf and beyond, involves massive infrastructure and economic development projects, including controversial plans for Gaza's waterfront. He argues that economic prosperity driven by private capital can succeed where decades of diplomacy have failed. This philosophy is central to the board's proposed strategy, using overwhelming financial power to reshape geopolitical landscapes. It's the ultimate form of dollar diplomacy. This new body would operate with a multi-billion-dollar fund, allowing it to finance reconstruction, deploy private security contractors, and invest in technologies aimed at conflict prevention. The promise is a proactive, results-oriented approach. Instead of waiting for a crisis to unfold, the board would intervene with its economic might, making offers that, in theory, are too good to refuse. They see themselves not as conquerors, but as developers, building a more stable world one megaproject at a time. But this vision of a sleek, efficient world order raises profound and troubling questions. Who gets to sit on this board? The proposed selection process is opaque, relying on the judgment of the initial founding members. This immediately creates a problem of legitimacy. How can an unelected, self-appointed group of elites claim the moral authority to decide the fate of nations? It represents an unprecedented concentration of power, blurring the lines between private interest and public good. Critics argue this isn't international cooperation. It's a corporate takeover of global governance. The proposal has sent shockwaves through the world of traditional diplomacy. At the United Nations in New York, there's a palpable sense of unease. For decades, the UN has been the cornerstone of international law, built on the principle of the sovereign equality of all its members. The Global Security Board challenges this very foundation. A former UN diplomat might tell you that, while the Security Council is flawed, its inclusivity is its strength. Every nation, big or small, has a voice. The board, by contrast, is exclusive by design. This sets up a dangerous rivalry, pitting a body with universal legitimacy but limited effectiveness against one with immense power but questionable authority. The legal questions are just as daunting. International law experts are scrambling to understand what legal status such a board would even have. Could it authorize interventions? Could its private security forces operate with impunity? Without the backing of international treaties, the board would exist in a legal gray zone, potentially undermining the very laws of war and human rights it claims to uphold. Across the Atlantic, traditional alliances are showing signs of strain. European leaders, while privately frustrated with the UN's limitations, are publicly wary. The idea of a Security Council driven by private American and Gulf capital feels like a direct challenge to their own foreign policy influence. It threatens to sideline institutions like NATO and the European Union, creating a new power dynamic where Washington's most powerful private citizens, not its elected government, call the shots. This tension between effectiveness and inclusivity is at the heart of the debate. Do we sacrifice democratic principles for the promise of a more peaceful, albeit centrally controlled world? Let's return to the specific proposals on the table. Like Kushner's vision for Gaza, specialists in post-conflict reconstruction will tell you that true peace is built from the ground up, with the consent and participation of the local population. Imposing a grand vision from the outside, no matter how well funded, often fails because it ignores the complex social, political, and historical realities on the ground. Can a luxury waterfront development truly heal decades of trauma and dispossession? Or is it a neo-colonial fantasy that serves the interests of investors more than the people it claims to help? The symbolism of Davos itself is powerful. It's a place where global elites gather to discuss the world's problems, often in luxurious isolation from the people those problems affect. Choosing this location for the 2026 summit is no accident. It sends a clear message. The future of global security will be decided here in the mountains by a select few. The image of empty chairs at the table, representing the nations and peoples not invited, is a stark reminder of who is being excluded from this new world order. So, as we look ahead to 2026, we are faced with a fundamental choice. Do we double down on our existing, imperfect institutions, working to reform them from within? Or do we embrace a radical new model, trading the messy, often frustrating process of global democracy for the swift, clean efficiency of a corporate board? The proposed Global Security Board is more than just a new committee. It's a referendum on the very nature of power in the 21st century. It forces us to ask who has the right to decide on matters of war and peace, and whether the immense wealth accumulated by a handful of individuals should translate into the authority to govern us all. The stakes couldn't be higher. The debate that is starting now will define the world our children inherit. Will it be a world of inclusive cooperation, or one managed by an exclusive club of the powerful? The path chosen in Davos could change everything. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis insightful, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world.